Hey everybody, just wanted to kind of quickly go through kind of how you'll be set up for this class, at least for the first class. I'll try to do one of these videos pretty regularly, but I'm not going to promise anything because the semester's probably going to get crazy. But just for the beginning, I wanted to kind of show you what you'll be working with and what it looks like, especially if you've never taken an online class before. When you get to our homepage, My Courses, okay? If you go to, let me just go ahead and, oh, I was on Facebook. Okay, if you go to the COA homepage, okay, there'll be a thing that says Moodle. You can click on that. Then you'll log in like you normally would with everything else. Okay. And you'll wait for that. Okay, and then it'll tell you, attention, starting soon, you will no longer be on Moodle. Okay, so then you'll click on this, and it'll take you to where you'll go. Hopefully soon it'll say My Courses instead of Moodle, so you don't have to go through that. But for now, that's what you do. And of course, you can always just type it in the address bar, mycourses.albemarle.edu. Okay, and from there, it'll display all the courses that you have, which, as you can see, I have quite a few. So let's find yours. Hopefully you don't have quite this many. Okay, here we are. English 112 N2, that's our class. You'll click on it, and here we are. Okay, so this is what my page looks like, and I'll turn the editing off so you can get a better idea of what it'll look like for you. But yours should look pretty much almost exactly like this. You'll have the welcome page. Here you can click on the syllabus and schedule. You know, you'll see all the things we're doing. I've already put up that I want you to have a classmate introduction. You'll click there. You know, I want you to tell about yourself. You'll click out a new discussion topic to tell about yourself. So pretty straightforward stuff. And as you can see here, I have week 1. Of course, week 2 I'll have week 2, week 3 I'll have week 3. So it'll be really straightforward. You'll come here, you'll look at what's expected of you for the week, and you'll do it by Sunday. All assignments, and you'll know this if you read the syllabus and schedule, and plus I say it every week, all assignments are going to be due. I'll give them to you on Monday, and they'll be due the following Sunday by 5 p.m. Okay? So I don't care when you do them, but I'm just going to be, you won't be able to do them after Sunday at 5 p.m. So make sure you do them by then. Wait till the last minute if you want, but make sure by 5 I've got them. Okay, so real quick, alright, so this is one I'm going to put up on the Moodle site. You can go through it yourself, or you can just watch this video. But basically, I'm going through just things in Chapter 1, okay? So starting off, I wanted you to kind of look at the syllabus. And of course, like I told you, you can find that on the homepage. And just the syllabus is a pretty straightforward syllabus. It looks like every other syllabus you've probably ever had. But, you know, pretty straightforward. I tell you my office hours, I tell you how to reach me, I tell you about the course, academic integrity, okay? We're going to go over plagiarism in more detail, but, you know, by English 112, you guys should have a pretty good idea of what's plagiarism and what isn't, but we are going to go over it, so that's up front because it's so important. Expected student outcomes, things you can expect from the class, things that you can expect of me, things I should be able to expect of you. Required materials, you'll have to have your textbook, everything's an argument, and you also need to have this reference guide. Honestly, I don't care if it's this exact reference guide, but you do have to have a reference guide of some kind. Okay, going down in here into the attendance policy, because this is an online class, we will not adhere to a traditional policy. Okay, obviously we're not actually meeting, so we can't have a, you know, set number of classes you can miss, because there are no classes really. But basically how I do it is this. Every week I've got weekly assignments, okay? And you completing those weekly assignments is pretty much like your attendance, okay? So if you miss more than 1 week of assignments, I reserve the right to drop you from the course. Okay, so if I log in and get to grading 1 week and I notice you haven't done anything, okay, fine. If I log in another week and I notice you haven't done anything yet again, I'm going to have a red flag go up and assume that you are no longer interested in the course, especially if I haven't heard from you. So be careful. Don't miss more than 1 week of assignments. If you do and you have a issue, please talk to me, okay? Because I don't know what's going on if you don't speak with me, okay? But just know if you miss more than 1 week of assignments, I do reserve the right to drop you. Policy on late work. All work is going to be due by the due date. I'm not going to accept any late homework or late, I guess it's all homework in here, or classwork, however you want to look at it. I'm not accepting that late. I will accept papers late just because they're worth so much of your grade, but I'll accept them late at a penalty of 10 points a day. Okay, so try not to have them in late because you're already starting 1 letter grade down from what you should, okay? Here's how I'll be grading everything, so just kind of check that out, get a feel for it. Grading scale, pretty standard. And then this goes into all the things we're going to be doing every week. And of course, like I showed you, I'm going to be, providing much more detail, weekly as for what I expect. And this, I would suggest you write it down, because this is kind of a big mess and it's hard to kind of decipher, and it's hard for you to go through and see what's due when. So I wrote down all your major assignments, okay? So write these down, put them in your little calendar, put them in your phone, however you can remember them, okay? These are all the most important things, okay? So that's the syllabus. And then from there, I want you to kind of go over chapter 1. And I want you to kind of read along with this as you go, because the book is actually a pretty good textbook, and it does a good job of trying to kind of relate things back to things we find interesting. But the PowerPoint's just kind of to act as a supplement. So chapter 1, the very first thing it goes into is that everything's an argument. We see and hear arguments constantly. We hear and see them all the time. Magazines, newspapers, television, conversations, images, what you wear. Everything's an argument, okay? And in our face-to-face classes, we look at things like this. We look at things like the People magazine. We look at things like what people wear. We look at things like friends don't let friends drink Starbucks, okay? And you'll ask yourself, well, how is this People magazine homepage? How is this an argument? I don't understand how this is an argument. They're not arguing anything. Well, they kind of are, okay? When we think about everything being an argument, when we kind of get this in our head in terms of, okay, I can accept that every single publication, every single thing that's put out into the public sphere is arguing something, okay? This People magazine homepage is arguing that, well, for one, they're arguing that this is news. They're arguing that Heather Locklear and Halle Berry and Emma Stone and Tim Tebow and what they have to say, and things like pets and games and style and red carpet style, they're arguing that all of that is newsworthy, okay? Somebody else could come along and say, no, that's not newsworthy, okay? So it's an argument. They're arguing that this is important information, okay? Something that simple can be an argument. Same thing with clothes. This person is obviously making a very different argument about herself than this person or even this person, okay? So it's things like that. People make arguments all the time, and they're not always verbal. In fact, a lot of the time, they're not verbal. Subtle arguments are made constantly. Okay? So there's also, your book will go into these purposes of argument. Invitational argument, argument for the purpose of winning, Rogerian argument, you can read that in more detail. Argument versus persuasion, okay? Argument is to use evidence and reason to discover some version of the truth. Persuasion is to change a point of view, move others from conviction to action. So it's a pretty fine line, okay? Am I arguing with you, or am I trying to persuade you, okay? The main difference is when you're involved in an argument, you're trying to get somebody to discover the truth. Persuasion is you're trying to change someone over to your way of thinking, whether it's the truth or not, pretty much. Okay? Kinds of argument that Chapter 1 goes over. We've got arguments of fact, arguments of definition, arguments of evaluation, proposal arguments. We'll go into those in more detail. Arguments of fact involves a statement that can be proven or disproven with scientific evidence, specific evidence. It's not subtle. Involves layers of complexity, okay? It's basically saying, I can prove that something is true based on facts, okay? So an example your book gives is pollution in the ocean really occurring, okay? In order to prove that that is or isn't true, I would have to have some kind of specific evidence that I could cite, okay? Some kind of specific fact, okay? And that's how I'd bring people over to my way of thinking, by presenting facts, okay? We don't always have to present facts to bring other people over to our way of thinking. And we'll talk about that more later. Okay, arguments of definition. We will go into this a lot more. This is something we'll discuss in class, but an argument of definition involves determining whether one known issue belongs in a second category. Okay, so it's basically coming up with a definition and then measuring something else against that definition. Okay, so for example, your book gives these examples. Is a fetus a human being? If so, is abortion murder? Okay, so this is a thing, this is an issue, a hot topic, okay? Why is it that people are so divided about whether or not abortion is murder? And it's because people have different definitions of what a human being is, okay? So based on this definition, based on my definition of human being, that's going to define if I think abortion is murder or not, okay? Is playing video games a sport? Well, that depends on how I define sport. First I'll have to define sport, and then I'll measure video games against that criteria. Okay, so that's pretty much how these will go. And again, this is just kind of a quick run through. We're definitely going to go over these in a lot more detail, but this is just to kind of get you thinking. Okay, arguments of evaluation. These arguments present criteria and then measure people, ideas, or things against those standards. We're not going to go over this too much, but it is mentioned, so you could go over that if you wanted, but we don't have to. We're not specifically writing a paper on it, but still good to know. Proposal arguments. These are really common types of arguments. These arguments propose action, okay? Writers of proposal arguments first describe a problem and then ask, what can we do, or what can be done about this problem? Okay, so I can say, 70% of Americans don't recycle. How can this be changed? Well, I propose X, Y, and Z. Or I can say, you know, in a poll I did, I found that 25% of students in College of the Albemarle, you know, don't have the funding they need to attend classes a full 2 years. What can be done about this? What can we do? You know, as a teacher, I noticed that my students are late to class because they say they can't ever find a place to park. How can this be fixed? What can we do? Okay? So we notice a problem or a phenomenon or something happening. It concerns us, and then we ask ourselves, what can be done? How can we fix it? Okay? And these types of things happen all the time. These proposal arguments kind of affect the way we live, work, operate, etc. They're very important arguments, and we hear them all the time. Turn on the news tonight, and you will definitely hear proposal arguments. Okay, now the other thing we want to think about is audience, okay? And we'll talk about audience so much that you'll never want to hear the word audience again, okay? But basically, the reason audience is so important is because we have to ask ourselves, as writers, who is our argument for, okay? So if I'm writing about, let's go back to our recycle thing. 70% of Americans don't recycle. How can this be changed, okay? Think about how I would word this to young children, how I'd word it to, you know, teenagers, young college students, how I'd word it when I'm speaking to Congress or some, you know, official governing body, okay? My language is going to change. The issues I bring up are going to change based on who I'm speaking to, what's important to them, what matters, what they care about, what they're bored by. You know, I'm obviously not going to use the same language to speak to these people as I am to speak to these people, or even these people, okay? And that's an extreme example, but that's what we have to think about. Who is our audience? What do they care about? How are we going to keep them interested, okay? Now, I have to read your papers, but pretend you're writing to somebody who doesn't have to read your papers. How are you going to keep them interested? Well, you're going to cater to the things they care about, okay? So I want you to keep that in the back of your mind, and we'll talk more about that as the class goes on. Okay, so I'm not going to make you do this because we're not in class, lucky you. Something to think about, okay? But in one of my past classes, and as you can see, we had, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We had literally 5 people in this class. So I made them all their own group, and I said, pretend you have to talk about the issue of ocean pollution. And everybody got a different category of people they had to speak to. So I just want you to think, if you were speaking to, pretend you got one of these groups, what kind of language would you use? What kind of, you know, facts would you bring up? What kind of facts would you leave out? What would matter to these people? How would your language and wording be different based on the audience you're speaking to? Okay? So think about that. Make sure you do your assignments for the week, and I look forward to the rest of the class. Thank you.